A quiet evening settled over the narrow street. The last light faded from the windows. Thomas moved through the dimly lit basement corridors. His footsteps were steady and familiar. He had walked these passages many times before. His feet found their way almost without thinking. The basement level existed in perpetual twilight. Soft maintenance lights created small pools of illumination. They glowed along the concrete walls gently. He reached the elevator maintenance room door. He unlocked it with his usual key. Inside, the space was organized with precision. Metal shelving held spare parts neatly labeled. Parts were arranged by type and size. Tools hung from a pegboard on the wall. Each tool had its designated spot ready. 3 logbooks sat on a simple desk. Their pages held months of careful documentation. Thomas set down his small bag slowly. He turned on the overhead light switch. The fluorescent bulbs hummed softly as they warmed. They cast an even glow across the room. He had always liked this quiet space. It was orderly and calm here. Everything made sense in this maintenance room. Problems had solutions within these walls. He picked up the evening shift logbook. He reviewed the previous day's notes carefully. His eyes scanned the handwriting thoughtfully. He took in the recorded information slowly. Everything seemed normal from what he read. The building's systems had operated smoothly yesterday. There were no urgent issues to address, just steady, unremarkable functioning of the building. But then his attention caught on something. One single line near the bottom stood out. A slight irregularity had been noted down. It was in one middle-floor elevator. Nothing dramatic about the note itself, nothing suggested immediate danger or concern, just a small notation worth observing more. The words were brief and professional, but they caught Thomas's full attention. He made a mental note right then. He would watch that specific elevator closely. Today's inspection would pay special attention there, careful attention, separated good from excellent maintenance. Most people rode elevators without noticing anything. But Thomas had trained his senses well. Years of work had sharpened his awareness. He detected subtle variations in mechanical systems. These variations indicated when things were changing. He opened his inspection checklist and prepared. His morning routine began the same way always. This rhythm structured his entire working day. First, he reviewed the overnight notes carefully. Then he moved through the building slowly. He inspected each elevator system in sequence. He checked the mechanical components methodically. He listened for sounds indicating possible wear. He felt the movement of each car. Each car traveled through its shaft smoothly. The work required focus and attention here. But Thomas found this work deeply satisfying. There was something calming about precision work. Everything had its place in this world. Everything had a specific purpose and function. Every component served the larger system well. Thomas gathered his tools and began moving. He started through the building systematically now. He took the service staircase up from basement. His footsteps echoed slightly in the enclosed space. As he climbed, the light quality changed. Basement corridors gave way to ground level. The architecture became more refined up here. Walls were paneled instead of bare concrete. The lighting was brighter and warmer now. He emerged into the hotel lobby area. It was early morning in the building, not yet the time when guests awakened. A few staff members moved about preparing. They were beginning their work for the day. The cleaning crew had already been through. The lobby gleamed from careful attention given. Thomas moved past the main desk area. He headed toward the first bank of elevators. This was where he would start today. Each elevator would receive his full attention. Each one would be checked and assessed. It was methodical work, but it mattered. The first elevator stood quiet and still. It was waiting for its daily purpose. It would carry guests and staff up. It would carry them down through the building. Thomas unlocked the maintenance panel carefully now. He began his systematic inspection routine. He checked the cable tension with care. He felt the slight resistance that indicated proper stress was being maintained correctly. He examined the pulleys very carefully. He ensured they were clean and aligned. He tested the braking system thoroughly. He confirmed it engaged smoothly and held. Everything with this elevator was in good order. Thomas made notes in his notebook. He recorded the date and time clearly. He noted the condition of each part. These notes would go in the logbook. They would create a detailed record. The building systems would be documented. He moved to the second elevator now. This one also seemed to function well. But his trained senses remained fully alert. He was watching for any subtle change, the slight sound of the cables moving, the feel of the counterweight system working, the smoothness or roughness of moving parts. One by one, each elevator received attention. Each one was checked quite thoroughly. Each one was documented carefully after. The work was repetitive, but not tedious. Instead, it was grounding for Thomas. The consistency created a sense of order. Control felt natural within this rhythm. As the morning turned toward afternoon, Thomas moved forward. He headed toward the middle floors slowly. He came to that specific elevator now, the one noted in yesterday's logbook. He unlocked the maintenance access panel. He began his detailed inspection carefully. His hands moved with practiced efficiency. They checked each component in the sequence, and then he felt something different, a very slight hesitation in the movement. It was in the right guide rail. The hesitation was barely even noticeable. Someone without training would never have detected. But Thomas felt it immediately right away. His fingers recognized the subtle irregularity. They moved across the metal with knowledge. He conducted a more detailed inspection now. He ran his hands along the rail. He felt for the exact location. He felt for where the wear was. Guide rails kept the car perfectly vertical. They prevented any lateral or sideways movement. Without them, friction would create serious problems. Rail wear was usually a gradual process, but catching it early was very important. Early detection prevented component damage from happening. Thomas found where the wear was most evident. It was on the right side of rail, about 3/4 of the way down. The metal showed signs of friction contact. The elevator car's wheels rubbed at this point. It was not critical for now. The elevator was still safe to operate, but it needed attention in coming weeks. Thomas made careful notes in his book. He documented exactly where he found where. He recorded what he had observed clearly. These notes went in the formal logbook. He would communicate them to building management. This kind of finding required planning ahead. But it did not require panic. It was information for proper scheduling. It allowed resources to be allocated well. The morning continued as Thomas worked through. He completed his inspection of remaining elevators. By the time he finished all checks, the hotel had fully awakened for the day. Guests were moving through the lobby space. Staff members worked at their various stations. The building was operating at full rhythm. Thomas made his way back down now. He returned to the basement maintenance room. He sat down at the simple desk. He transferred his notes to the logbook. His handwriting was careful and precise. It matched entries from many months prior. Each entry held the date clearly. Each entry held the inspection time. Each entry listed the elevators checked. Each entry noted observations and findings. Today's entry included the where observation. It was in the right guide rail. It was on the middle floor elevator. He described exactly what he had found. He recommended scheduling maintenance soon, within the next 4 to 6 weeks. The recommendation was not urgent in nature, but it was clear and direct. Thomas reviewed what he had written down. He made sure it was accurate. He made sure it was complete. The logbook was more than personal record. It was the building's permanent history. Future maintenance workers would read these notes. Building managers would reference them for planning. Insurance companies might eventually review them. The documentation had to be precise. It had to be very professional. He closed the logbook carefully now. He set it aside on the desk. The morning inspection was now complete. The building's systems had all been checked. One issue had been identified today. It would require attention in coming weeks. Now the day's other tasks awaited. Thomas took a break for a moment. He moved into the small break room. It was attached to maintenance area. He made himself a cup of coffee. He used the shared coffee maker here. The coffee was not fancy at all, but it was hot and comforting. It gave him time to pause. He could reflect on morning's work. He sat on the simple bench. It was a place for maintenance breaks. From here he could see outside. A small high window looked upward. It showed the street level above. He could see passers-by's feet passing. He could see lower storefront portions. It was a limited view of world. But it reminded him of something. The building existed in larger context. It was part of the city. As he drank his coffee slowly, Thomas reviewed his coming week's schedule. There were routine inspections every day. There was documentation to keep current. And now there was the planning for the guide rail work. The maintenance would need to be scheduled. Building maintenance was never truly finished. Systems were constantly being used and stressed. They experienced daily wear and strain. Gradual wear happened over extended time. Metal fatigued from constant operation slowly. Components needed lubrication and adjustment. Sometimes they needed replacement entirely. But this was why maintenance mattered. Regular attention prevented small problems growing. Careful stewardship kept systems reliable. Systems continued to function for years. Thomas finished his coffee quite slowly. He prepared for his day ahead. There would be more elevator checks. There would be documentation to maintain. And now there was something new. The planning for maintenance work needed. The guide rail issue required attention. As morning turned toward afternoon slowly, the building continued around Thomas quietly. Guests moved between floors constantly. They used the elevators throughout day. They moved up and down regularly. They did not think about systems. They did not consider maintenance work. For them, elevators were simply convenient, a way to move between levels. But for Thomas, it was different. Each elevator use was observation time. He watched how systems were functioning. Every movement provided him with information. The way the car accelerated upward, the way it decelerated coming down, the precision of stopping at floors. All these details told Thomas something. They told him the system condition. Later in the afternoon hours came Thomas, was reviewing technical manuals inside. He was updating his system knowledge. He heard footsteps in hallway outside. Someone was approaching the maintenance room. This was quite unusual, actually. Most people did not venture here. The basement areas were not general traffic. The door opened and woman entered. She wore business attire and clothes. Something about her suggested importance. She carried herself with clear presence. She looked around the room with interest. She observed the organized space carefully. She noticed the tools and parts. She looked at the logbooks on desk. Thomas stood and greeted her professionally. He was not surprised by visitors. Management people came occasionally to talk. But her basement presence was noteworthy. The woman introduced herself quite clearly. She explained her building interest to him. She wanted to understand the building, wanted to know how it functioned. She had decided to spend time. She was meeting department heads and staff. She wanted to learn operations and systems. Now she wanted to speak with him. She wanted to know about elevators. Thomas recognized her authority in building. He was courteous and professional immediately. He asked how he could help her. Over the next hour that passed, Thomas explained the elevator systems in detail. He showed her the maintenance logbooks. He described what he checked each day. He explained the importance of maintenance. He explained preventive maintenance and documentation. He talked about safety keeping systems. He talked about reliable elevator functioning. The woman listened very carefully indeed. She asked thoughtful questions throughout. She wanted to understand the systems. She wanted to know how they worked. She wanted to know why maintenance mattered. She asked about maintenance timelines required. She asked about the associated costs. She asked about safety considerations involved. Thomas answered her questions quite honestly. He explained elevator systems' complexity clearly. They required regular, careful attention always. They needed to function safely, reliably. He discussed different types of maintenance. There were routine daily checks required. There were extensive repairs and replacements. He explained his documentation system completely. It created records of building systems. It created records of their condition. As the conversation continued quite steadily, Thomas felt no nervousness about discussing. This was someone with authority here. He was confident in his work. The work was careful and professional. The documentation was complete and accurate. The systems were maintained very well. The woman seemed quite satisfied indeed. She thanked him for his time. She thanked him for explanations given. She noted that he took work seriously. She said he understood systems well. She said he understood his responsibility. After she left the room quietly, Thomas returned to his work again. But something had shifted in awareness. This woman, whoever she might be, had taken time to understand building. That suggested something about her role. Perhaps she owned part of building. Perhaps she managed it or oversaw. And she had wanted to learn. She had shown interest in his work. The afternoon continued quite steadily on. Thomas monitored elevators moving through day. He responded to calls from desk. They reported one elevator running slower. He suspected the guide rail wear. He had identified it this morning. He noted the report very carefully. He confirmed he would monitor closely. As the day wound toward ending, Thomas prepared for evening shift worker. Another maintenance person would arrive now. They would monitor systems through evening. They would monitor through night hours. Thomas provided a detailed handoff report. He explained what was observed today. He described what required attention soon, in coming days and coming weeks. He made sure the evening tech was aware of rail wear issue. He explained the slower elevator running. He showed the logbook notes clearly. He explained his observations fully. He discussed recommendations for maintenance. The evening technician acknowledged information. He confirmed he would monitor closely. Thomas gathered his things to leave. He prepared to exit the building. He walked from the basement up. He moved through familiar corridors slowly. He moved toward the exit door, the one he used each day. The building was shifting into evening. Some guests were leaving to depart. Others were arriving for their stay. Staff members were changing their shifts. The constant activity continued throughout. It characterized the building's daily cycle. He emerged into the evening air. Thomas felt satisfaction from work done. The building was functioning quite reliably. The systems were maintained with great care. The documentation was complete and accurate. Tomorrow he would return again. He would continue the same work. Days passed and turned to weeks. Thomas arrived each morning as always. He performed his systematic inspections carefully. The routine continued very consistently. It had always characterized his work. The building's systems continued to function. They carried guests and staff up and down. Throughout every day, the elevators moved. The elevator with guide rail wear continued to show the same hesitation. Thomas had detected it initially that day. The wear rate seemed quite stable. It was not accelerating rapidly, but it was also not stopping. This kind of situation guided planning. The work needed to happen soon, but there was scheduling flexibility. The timing could be arranged carefully. During this time period that passed, Thomas learned more about the woman. Through conversations with other staff members, he understood more about her role. Through what he overheard in building, information came to him gradually. She was a significant building owner. She had invested major financial resources. She was taking active management role. She was overseeing building operations. She was working to understand systems. This knowledge gave Thomas satisfaction. The building owner seemed to care. She cared about maintenance and systems. She cared about proper stewardship. Too many owners viewed buildings. They viewed them as just assets. They minimized maintenance to save money. This woman took a different approach. She invested in proper maintenance. She wanted to understand building condition. Thomas also noticed the building itself. It seemed to reflect her approach. Everything was maintained at high standard. The common areas were clean, bright. They were well lit throughout the day. The staff seemed motivated and professional. There was a sense throughout building. Quality was valued and appreciated. Proper care was being taken. The guide rail maintenance was finally scheduled. It was scheduled for a specific week. The building's occupancy would be lower. Thomas would work with specialists. A specialized elevator technician would come. This person had complex repair expertise. The process would require careful work. The elevator would need to be secured. The car would be removed from shaft. The worn guide rail would be replaced. In preparation for the coming work, Thomas spent additional time reviewing. He reviewed technical manuals very carefully. He refreshed his understanding completely. He reviewed guide rail replacement. He wanted to be prepared well. He wanted to be ready completely. He wanted to work with specialists. This was a learning opportunity, an opportunity to expand his knowledge. The week of the project arrived. The specialized technician came to building. He assessed the situation quite carefully. Thomas showed him the worn rail. He explained what he had identified. The technician examined it carefully. He confirmed Thomas's assessment was correct. The work began with preparation. Safety systems were put carefully in place. They ensured the car would not fall. Something could go wrong with rigging. The car was secured in shaft. It was secured at a specific level. Power to the elevator was disconnected. This ensured worker safety completely. Then the process of accessing began. Access panels had to be removed. The area around where was examined. They needed to understand what replacement. They needed to know exact specifications. Thomas worked alongside the technician. He learned through direct observation. He assisted with the specific tasks. Over several days, the work continued. Thomas found the work quite engaging. He found it educational and interesting. He was seeing the systems, parts that were normally completely hidden. He was learning from skilled technician. He was developing new capability. He was expanding his own expertise. The specialized technician was quite patient. He was thorough in his approach. He explained what he was doing. He explained why each step mattered. He pointed out specific details. Thomas should pay attention to these. He should watch them in future. He shared knowledge accumulated through years of working with elevators. By the final day of project, the new guide rail was installed. It was carefully and precisely aligned. The elevator was tested multiple times. It was tested through multiple cycles. It operated smoothly without any hesitation. The hesitation was completely gone now. The maintenance work had been successful. The building owner visited the area. She came while the work continued. She observed the final project stages. She spoke with both workers. She spoke with Thomas and specialist. She asked what had been found. She asked what had been done. She seemed genuinely interested in work. She wanted to understand what happened. Thomas explained the wear pattern found. He described the replacement process clearly. He explained the careful alignment work. He noted the smooth operation now. The elevator would work reliably. It would work for many years ahead. The building owner thanked them both. She thanked them for careful work. She said the maintenance was high quality. She said it was exactly right. This was the preventive maintenance kind, the kind that kept buildings working. After the owner left the area, Thomas felt a quiet accomplishment. The work was finally complete. The problem had been addressed. The elevator was functioning smoothly now. The work had been observed and appreciated. It had been appreciated by authority. It had been appreciated by someone with resources and with position. In the following weeks that passed, Thomas returned to normal routine work. The repaired elevator continued functioning smoothly. The guide rail replacement had succeeded. The hesitation was completely gone. Thomas continued his daily inspections. He continued his documentation work. He maintained systems with attention. He had always applied this care. The work remained routine and steady, but routine in satisfying way. The building was functioning very well. The systems were quite reliable. The maintenance work was making difference. The difference was quite measurable. As months passed along quite slowly, Thomas thought more about his work. He thought about its larger context. He thought about building operations. He recognized the maintenance was crucial. Elevator systems were not visible. Most guests never thought about them, not unless something went completely wrong. But reliability and smooth operation mattered. It mattered to everyone's experience, everyone who used the building. He also became more curious. He was curious about the owner. Through conversations and observations made, he had learned some things. She came from financial success background. She seemed to have real expertise. She had real expertise in real estate. She had expertise in building management. She showed careful attention to detail. She showed this in her approach. But there were unknowns about her. Her personal life was unknown. Her time outside building was unknown. What experiences shaped her values? What brought her satisfaction besides? What she valued beyond profession? The unknowns were not troubling, though. Professional relationships had certain boundaries. He knew the professional person. He could respect her values. He could respect her approach. But the fuller person remained. The fuller person remained unknown. And that was quite fine. What mattered was observable. He could see she cared. She cared about quality greatly. She cared about maintenance work. She cared about proper stewardship. These facts were quite observable. They created mutual respect between. They created alignment of values. Seasons changed over passing time. Thomas worked through summer heat. He worked through winter cold. Maintenance needs shifted with seasons. But the fundamental rhythm stayed. He arrived each morning regularly. He performed inspections every day. He documented his findings clearly. He responded to issues as issues arose throughout the day. He prepared for evening shift. The building continued to function. Guests continued using elevators. Staff continued their various work. The building was maintained well. Thomas's relationship with the owner remained primarily professional in nature. But there was mutual respect. They encountered each other sometimes. They would exchange simple greetings. Sometimes they discussed building matters. Sometimes they discussed maintenance topics, but interactions stayed professional, stayed within appropriate boundaries. One afternoon during his work, the building owner approached him. This time she sought him. She was not just passing, she seemed to be looking for him specifically. She began by acknowledging work. She noted what she observed. She had been watching building. She noticed elevator reliability. The systems functioned very well. She attributed this to Thomas, to his careful maintenance work. She shared from her career, from her real estate work, from her building management experience. She had learned something important, the difference between excellent and between just functioning buildings came down to people like Thomas exactly, people who understood systems, people who cared about quality, people with attention to detail. She explained her own career. She had built her success through attention to how things worked exactly. She learned to maintain quality. She had learned that buildings operated the same way. They required people who understood, people who cared about systems, people who kept them working. She asked about Thomas, his background and his story, what led him to work, what led him to maintenance. Thomas answered her quite directly. He had always been curious about how things worked. He had pride in work. Throughout his entire life, this work felt meaningful. It directly affected the functioning of building. The conversation was quite brief, but it was genuine. There was no false formality, but also no attempt to create a closer personal relationship, not appropriate at all. It was simply a moment of acknowledgement, mutual respect between people, two people who understood the value of careful work, the value of attention. After this conversation occurred, Thomas felt something shift, a shift in how he experienced work. He remained focused on tasks, on the concrete maintenance work, but he understood more clearly his work mattered, that someone with expertise, with significant resources even, appreciated what he did. He began to think more deliberately how his work fit within the larger building, the whole ecosystem together. Maintaining elevators was a specific part of whole building electrical systems too, plumbing systems that worked, heating and cooling systems, security systems throughout. All these worked together. They created the whole. He also noticed something. The building owner seemed to understand this integrated perspective fully. When discussing building matters, she referenced how different decisions affected overall functioning. She thought about building as complete integrated system, everything balanced and worked. This was different from other managers. Some viewed management as separate departments in same building, but she understood true excellence required viewing the building as integrated, complete system. All parts work together. More than a year after Thomas first found the where, he reflected on time, how understanding had evolved, how his perspective shifted. His work stayed routine, but it had depth, new and different depth. He maintained systems well, but not just that. He was stewarding a good building, being stewarded very well by someone who understood why it mattered. He contributed to something that valued quality, People seemed to work with sense of purpose, with sense of care. The building reflected values, everything maintained very well. Common areas clean, bright, staff professional and careful. There was a quality to environment, reflected careful attention, reflected financial investment. Thomas recognized something, being part of this. This was quite rare. Many buildings viewed as financial assets, maintenance minimized for profit, quality compromised for returns. But this building was different. As another year passed through, Thomas settled into peace with his work, peace with his place. He had been here long enough, it felt. It felt quite natural. The systems were familiar, his routines established well, his knowledge had deepened considerably with time. He understood the systems, understood them intimately, which elevators wore patterns, which components had issues, how to catch problems, catch them quite early. He had developed intuition about the systems based on observation, months of careful observation. One evening, quite slowly, as Thomas prepared to leave the building, he paused for a moment. He paused in lobby after completing his work. He looked around him, observed the space, how it functioned evening. Guests moved through lobby, staff worked at stations, elevators moved people, moved them up, down, smoothly and reliably. He thought about work, its place in building, in creating this functioning, this environment of care. Most people moved through this lobby space, never thought about maintenance work, the work that kept building operating. But that work, it was there, invisible but essential. He thought about the owner, what he had learned about her through his work, still did not know her full story, her personal life, her complete background. But he understood her values, her approach to building stewardship. Whatever her full story, she had chosen something, chosen to manage this building with care and quality. That choice mattered, created the environment around him. He thought about his own work, its meaning for him. He was maintenance worker. Work happened behind scenes, but it enabled building to function, kept systems reliable, contributed to quality everyone experienced. He did not need recognition or thanks. He was satisfied his work mattered, that it was done very well, that someone with resources and position actually cared about excellence and quality. As he walked out into the evening, Thomas felt deep peace, his day's work complete. Building was functioning smoothly, systems operating reliably. He was part of what enabled this all. The city had shifted to evening rhythm. Light was different now. Activity had slowed down. Soon it would be night. Building would shift to evening. Tomorrow Thomas would return and begin routine. He would arrive morning, perform inspections carefully, document his findings, monitor systems day, prepare evening shift. This was his work. This was his place. He had come to understand that it mattered, that it was meaningful. Work he could do with satisfaction. He moved toward transit, toward the station. He would catch ride toward home. As he walked on, he thought about building, about owner who managed it with care. He wondered about her life, her experiences outside. outside the building context, what shaped her approach, her way of thinking, but these were gentle wonderings only, not consuming thoughts. What he knew, it was enough. They shared values, both believed quality, both believed work, both understood something about value, about careful work, and that knowing, that simple understanding, created a connection, created mutual respect, transcended hierarchy between. As Thomas rode the transit, he looked out window at city passing. Evening light was fading, temperature dropping slowly, day settling to night. He thought about his work, years of work at building. How understanding grew and deepened. He had learned something important, something not obvious. Meaningful work was not dramatic, not high profile, not about status, was about doing work well, being part of something working, something functioning well, understanding contribution. Your contribution mattered even unseen. The transit moved through streets. Thomas watched, familiar path home. Tomorrow he would wake and return to building. Routine would continue, systems would function, work would go, and that was enough for him. More than enough. It was everything that mattered.